Okay, so just to give you a quick overview of Cardwatch, probably 97 to 98% of our clients are in the senior care side of things. We do have a couple of colleges and hospitals installed as well, but the focus of all of our efforts is in senior living. The design of Cardwatch is to manage all transactions within your community, and based on a set of assigned privileges that we call spending plans. Each spending plan can control one resident's buying habits or millions of residents' buying habits. And within Cardwatch, we can have thousands of spending plans. So it's really kind of unlimited in terms of what you can manage and how you can control it, the transaction side. Each resident may also belong to more than one spending plan, and on average, there's 3. So we set up one plan to manage the bulk of your transactions, which is in the meal plan side. That meal plan management can be in the form of simple meal clicks in terms of X number of meals a week or a month or a quarter. And then on top of that, we link that spending plan in the resident's profile to a secondary plan, which would receive all of the additional charge information. That can be extra food purchases, items that do not qualify on the traditional meal plan. So if you have upcharge meals, salon transactions, concierge transactions, pharmacy, events, whatever, we can push all of those transactions into the resident charge plan. Once the application is set up based on the administration's plans and desires for spending management, all of the transactions that hit Cardwatch are picked apart, making sure that they qualify on each spending plan. And once that's achieved, then we post the transaction to the resident's account or accounts. If in some cases there may be multiple accounts that are affected by a single transaction, that happens automatically without any input at all from a server or a cashier. Okay. So the key here is you can't manage what you don't measure. So we take in every single transaction, pick it apart, and then provide you with data to make decisions on what's hot, what's not, what's working, what's not working in terms of recipes, what are the popular items, and then we track the detail of every single transaction in every resident's account for years. So if they wanted to go back and look at transactions that occurred in January of 2017 on Wednesday, January 3rd, we can give them that information. Now, naturally, we can give that information to administration as well. So that's the key to Cardwatch, is we track everything. So as you can see here, fine dining room, casual cafe bistro, the beauty salon, concierge front desk, C-store, country store, and gift shop. And one of the things that's not in this little wheel here is we have a managed gift card application, which allows residents to buy gift cards for their family members. So when they come into your campus, they can spend anywhere on campus from that gift card. Now, naturally, a friend of a resident can come in and buy their own gift card and spend on campus any way they want. And they can also buy a gift card and give it to their family member, resident family member, and that gift card can be used for their purchases in this gift shop, salon, dining room, country store, etc. Okay, so the gift cards, you can customize your gift cards so that they reflect your brand, and every time that card is used throughout campus, we're of course managing the balance on that account as well as the details that are purchased with it. Okay, so at the end of the month, we gather up all of that charge information, extra charge detail, and we push it off to your billing application. Contained within that file are transactions either on a summary basis or on a detailed basis. So the choice is yours, and they will contain the billing codes from your billing application so that your billing application knows exactly how to post that transaction to the resident's account. So for example, from the beauty salon, you might have transaction number 1234. We can attach that billing code to the resident's transaction, and then it will appear on their monthly invoice with the transaction from the beauty salon. And again, that can be on a summary basis, or we can assign a billing code to the actual services that were performed in each revenue location. Okay. So again, everything is based around the resident. We focus on meal plans where 80 to 85% of your transactions will take place. You will note that it's an auto renewal. So every month we have a scheduled task that runs to automatically renew each of the meal plans and issue either a new set of or a collection of meals, dining dollars, charge balances, however you manage your traditional meal plans. And again, we base the meal plans can be set up so that they manage breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or if you only allow dinner on the meal plan, we can manage that as well. And then there's some other features in there that we'll go over in more detail. For a traditional charge plan, we accumulate the charges and present real-time balances on each receipt as well. In the event that a single transaction affects multiple accounts, the balances for each of the accounts affected will appear on that receipt. Okay. Here are some traditional methods of identification to automate the process and kind of speed things through. So if you have an existing ID system or a key fob for entry into a garage or facilities, we can piggyback on that technology and use that to uniquely identify the resident through the point of sale. Okay. These are some common type identification methods, and down below on the right here you see a sample of a traditional gift card. Okay, up top left is a key fob tag that has a barcode. It can also have a mag stripe on it as well. Okay, and then this is a traditional POS terminal down lower left. So any questions with that brief overview?
So I do have a question about your scheduled tasks to renew.
Okay.
Those be different dates, right? They don't all have to be on the first of the month, depending on the resident profile? No.
You can have 100 spending plans within Cardwatch. Each one of them can renew at a different time period. Okay. So when that scheduled task runs, it looks to see whether there's any plans that need to renew on this day. And it will renew only that single or multiple ones that need to be done for today's event.
Okay, great. And I know you mentioned dining dollars. So when you mentioned breakfast, lunch, dinner, we do have a spend program so they get dollars per month.
Yes.
And in any of the venues. So that also has that capability, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And then and you'll see in more detail when we get into the spending management side, but again, we can set up an individual plan for a resident. We can set up a spousal plan for a couple, so that instead of getting, say, $300 a month, they get 600 or 500, whatever your policy is, to spend each time they swipe their card or make a purchase at a point of sale. It will draw down on that dollar value and present the new balance on the receipt.
Okay, great.
Okay, and that we have other ways that the resident can look at their account balance as well. We have self-serve inquiry terminals where they can walk up to that terminal if it's in a public area, identify themselves by one of these methods here. We don't allow manual for the inquiry terminal. We don't allow manual account number entry. Has to be some form of ID, or manual account number entry with a verifying PIN number will work, but there has to be some auto identification. We can't have transposition of numbers and looking at another resident's profile. Okay.
Now, do you have manual entry for administrators in any capacity?
To look at transaction data?
Yeah, or to make a transaction.
Oh yeah, sure. A profiled staff member can look at any resident's account information and print out reports of transactions, either on a summary or a detailed basis.
Okay.
Okay. And although we'll touch on it a little later, we're just putting the finishing touches on a resident mobile application that they can run on their smartphone, a tablet, or a PC. They will be able to check their account balances there, view transactional information beginning with today and going backwards. They can also order food for pickup or delivery in whichever venue you describe as a pickup and takeout location. So you may have 3 dining venues, but you're only allowed to pick up or pre-order food at one. So that will be the menu they present or gets presented on their mobile device. And then they can order that food for up to 7 days in advance. And then they will, through email, will get confirmation of the order. Typically 15 or 20 minutes before pickup time, the order will be automatically printed in the kitchen for preparation with the resident's name and pickup time, and then off you go.
And you said that was in process?
Yeah, we expect to release it for the Leading Age show that starts October 31st.
Okay, great.
And at that time, it should already have been in beta test for a minimum of 2 weeks. Okay. At a client site in, we haven't decided yet, but it's either going to be a client site in Pennsylvania or in Virginia.
So Gary, let me ask a question about some of the other applications of that. Would that same type of application be used for, say, limited seats for life enrichment on to go on a trip? Would a resident be able to sign up for different events that way? And if a charge is attached, have that charge attached? Likewise, maintenance requests, could this be used as a maintenance work order program that the resident could order services in their apartment, stuff like that?
The answer is yes, but on the initial release, it's going to be for just the accounting side and then ordering food. Kind of phase 2 of the project is we are providing some integration work with a company called K4 Connect. I don't know if you've heard of them, but out of North Carolina, I believe. And they are putting together a resident portal, and we are going to interface with them so that they can pull account information out of Cardwatch, display it in their application, and then within their application, they do that event management side of things and so on, and they will be able to post those transactions through the Cardwatch application, so that we're not having, you know, multiple silos of charge posting going on. It will all be done centrally. So we recognize that not every client that new or old is going to embrace K4 Connect. There's one or two other applications out there that do similar things, but we will also build in the event side to our application. In fact, we do have some event management in there now. So that, yes, they will be able to view it on as part of that application and buy a ticket, get issued a ticket number. And then there's the management side when they show up for the event to either scan a barcode, or they can present their ticket to the attendant at the entrance to the event.
Cool. Okay.
So lots of nifty things to come. So, you know, we've given you a brief overview. What I want to take a look at now is the makeup of a dining spending plan. And I know you mentioned dining dollars, and that happens to be the top one on our list here. So this particular browse that you see here lists all of the types of spending plans that we have set up for one particular client. So there's a lot of modifications that we can do for each client based on just selection boxes. So we've kind of renamed these from what the client used, but this particular, the top one here, happens to be dining dollars. So all of this is a kind of the 3,000 foot mark selection. So dining dollars simply defines the type of plan, and then we go through each one of these folders down below here to select certain characteristics of the plan. Okay, so just to proceed a little bit, we've got an overall description down here. We look at some of the basics that we can also set. So, for example, you see allow inquiry display. So in some communities, they don't want to display all of the spending plans that a resident may be a member of. So you can select which ones can be displayed. So here you can see it's turned on. We have a flag here to indicate what items can be posted to this particular plan and thus the resident's account. So we've got meal and non-meal items only, or non-meal items only. So just to give you an example, we have many communities that in a cafe type setting, not only do they sell prepared food, but they also sell a limited amount of groceries. It might be a quart of milk, a pound of butter, a loaf of bread, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we keep all of those items in a similar menu file or the same menu file, but the grocery items are flagged as non-meal eligible. However, the prepared food is all flagged as meal plan eligible. So when the resident progresses through the cafe setting, and whether it's tray service or order, the prepared food ends up on their tray and perhaps the quart of milk and so on, and they proceed down to the cashier. The cashier enters in the prepared food, the quart of milk, and the pound of butter, and they enter it as though it's all one transaction. However, Cardwatch picks that transaction apart and says, well, these items qualify, the prepared food qualifies on the meal plan, but the quart of milk and the pound of butter do not. So the cashier finalizes the transaction on one single method of payment key, which in this case would be meal plan. But because Cardwatch has picked it apart, it will post the prepared food items that are meal plan eligible against the meal plan account, and in your case, dining dollars. However, the quart of milk and the pound of butter will be pushed down to the resident charge account. And on the receipt that's generated, it will indicate which items qualified on the meal plan account, which items were also pushed down to the resident charge account. So 2 accounts affected in one single transaction. Okay.
Got it.
So that's where that flag comes in. Now, as part of that, we have an automatic link here. The automatic link, based on this setting, meal items only, the automatic link determines which plan all non-qualifying items will get pushed to. So in this case, the plan is RC, which in our list up here, you can see is the resident charge account. Okay, so any non-qualifying meal items that get pushed down automatically are going to get posted to the resident's charge account. Okay, so after that, we have a allow to charge feature, which of course is by default always turned on. We have global maximums that you can set to determine whether you want a maximum dollar value to be posted to the account each and every day, or sorry, a limit placed on those each day. Typically, that is not set for residents. However, it could come into play if you were building a employee charge account. So to limit how much they can push onto their account each day. We can also control down here in the middle of this file or this settings. We can control what price level is given to the resident or to any plan member, employee, departmental charges, and so on. We have 6 price levels for every single item within Cardwatch, and you may have let's say, a default retail price that you offer to, let's say, guests who come into the community. And for example, it might be $10. However, a resident buys that same item and they get it at price level 2, which could be $8. And then for employees, they may purchase that exact same item, but they're linked to price level 3, which is $6. So we give you that capability. And in terms of, there's nothing there that the cashier has to know about this plan. All she has to do, he or she has to do, is sell those items, and Cardwatch will determine which price level is being offered to that resident or other cardholder. Okay, so again, done automatically. Okay, we can also do the same for, we have a retail item file as well to manage, say, gift shops and other retail venues that we can affect the price level there as well. And then finally, down below here, we have the tax exemption function. So, and I'm sure your community is exactly the same way. Any food meal plan transaction that occurs within your community is tax exempt to the resident.
Right.
So what Cardwatch can do is leave the tax on, but by setting this flag, we can indicate that this particular resident or a member of this plan gets the tax removed. Okay, so that
we have to add tax for a non-resident transaction. You're saying Cardwatch would automatically remove tax from a resident transaction.
Correct. Correct. So it always makes sure that you comply with whatever state law is in place. So if you have guests coming in that are not tax exempt, Cardwatch will leave the tax on the transaction. If you have a resident who is purchasing a meal plan transaction, their tax is removed.
Got it.
Okay, and again, it does that automatically, and we can manage 5 levels of tax. Okay.
Mary, does Cardwatch work with credit cards, or is it just your own specific cards?
No, we have an interface with credit cards. We use, as I'm sure you're aware, the whole credit card industry has changed dramatically in the last few years due to PCI security concerns. So in the good old days, 3 or 4 years ago, we were able to put a mag stripe reader that is integrated on the POS terminal and use that to swipe cards. We can't do that anymore. Now what we need to do is interface to an external PIN pad, and that PIN pad can be used for debit or credit transactions. So when we perform a transaction, hit the credit card method of payment key, Cardwatch essentially sends the value of that transaction along with a transaction number to the PIN pad. The card is swiped on the PIN pad or tapped on the face of the PIN pad itself, and then the authorization, or the PIN pad connects with the authorizing server, gets an authorization code, brings the transaction and authorization code back to the PIN pad. The PIN pad then sends a printing message back to Cardwatch, which we print on the receipt. So the card number that's on the back of the resident's card on the mag stripe is never exposed to our point of sale application. All we get is a masked card number that we print on the receipt, but we do print the authorization information. And then there's typically a web portal that you can sign on to get your credit card terminal reports. So we do keep a summary of the transaction information, how many transactions were paid by credit card, whether they were MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Diners Club, et cetera, or if they were debit transactions, we store those as well. So you can then compare what was entered through Cardwatch with your reports that you received through the credit card web portal.
Gary, our current system does not capture cash or credit card transactions and connect them to the resident profile. The only transactions that show in their account or profile are ones that they use their community card, what we call our community card.
Right.
Does Cardwatch capture every transaction, and if so, how does it connect it to the resident if we're not using the Cardwatch card?
Well, you can start every transaction by entering the resident's account number. If you do that, then regardless of the method of payment, it will assign that transaction to the resident. Okay. Now,
you begin a transaction is to enter the resident's account information?
Yeah, I mean, we can either do it at the beginning of a transaction or at the end of the transaction. The key is that at some point during the transaction, you have to enter in the resident's account number.
Right.
Okay. That's the only way we can assign the transaction to the resident, regardless of the method of payment. Okay.
Yep.
So the other thing that you have to consider is through Cardwatch, if you're assigning privileges, and for example, this price level thing that we talked about earlier, if they're paying by credit card, the privileges may not apply. Okay, so there are some considerations to accepting credit card transactions. The other thing that we've always encouraged clients to do is to try and reduce the number of locations where you take credit cards, and in favor of selling gift cards. So, for example, although no one's trying to say that you shouldn't take credit cards, but there's a fee associated with credit cards. And there could also be not only a percentage or a discount that you pay to the credit card company, but there could also be transaction fees. If you wanted to reduce those, then by employing the whole gift card side, then you can say only take credit cards at the concierge desk, for example. And if a resident or a guest wants to buy food or services throughout the campus, they buy a gift card and use that throughout the campus. And that gift card, of course, is reloadable as well. So just something to think about. Not trying to tell you that you shouldn't take credit cards, but if you can reduce their usage, you can put more money in your pocket.
Gotcha.
Okay. So the next folder here is exactly how this builds a calendar of your meal periods. So for this particular one, it's a straight monthly meal plan. It starts on the first of the month, ends on the last day of the month. It's not based on meals, which is why you see 0 here. And because it's not a meal plan, there's no rollover of unused meal credits. But you can see here that members are given 155 dining dollars to spend each month. Okay, and in this case, there is no rollover. If there was, you could set a maximum dollar value to rollover. So for example, you're giving them $155 each month. If you allowed rollover, you could put $20 in here, and that would roll over to the next period. Okay, so they theoretically, if they had $20 left over, they would start the next period with $175. Okay, so you can see by my little green line here that we are currently in month 9 for this plan. Okay, and I should point out that the dollars here are this is for a particular community, doesn't reflect your community. So if you allow if you provide $250 or $300, that's the number that would appear in here. Or if your plan is quarterly, then you'd only have obviously 4 entries here per month. You can also have a date range plan if you're trying to avoid that crush in the dining room at month's end. You can have a plan starting on the 7th of the month and going to the 6th the following month, and then have another group of residents that start on the 14th and go to the 13th of the following month. So there's a lot of flexibility within Cardwatch.
Okay, so that answers our staggered reset question. Finance has joined us, so if we've got any finance-based questions, we'll get that involved. I have a question on data storage. Does this require a separate server? Are you cloud-based, and who manages that?
Currently, we're not cloud-based. We plan to have that in place probably by early spring next year. Part of the whole cloud-based scenario is how we write our program, and we are in the process of what we call reimagining every element of Cardwatch. Of course, we want to keep the business logic in the front, but we want to put lipstick and mascara, as I call it, on the front end. And we've started with the mobile app, and we'll continue on with fine dining and with other POS terminal types. So by springtime, we expect to be hardware agnostic, so you can run Cardwatch on any operating system, any device, and we'll also have the option of being cloud-based by then. Currently, we are a client-server application, so it requires, it can be a remote server, but it needs a server of some sort, and the data storage obviously takes place there. 95% of our clients use an on-site server and just put it behind a firewall.
Okay, so that will keep IT happy.
They like on-site?
Well, yeah, being part of a larger healthcare system, they are concerned about who has access to our data. One of the challenges is when we have a problem that we need to discuss with the current POS provider, it involves not only them, but our IT team to give them rights to go in and look at their server to figure out what's going on with it. Takes a tremendous amount of manpower to be able to do that. So our IT team has been very supportive in saying we'd rather have an on-site server that we can manage.
Yeah, I kind of get that. And 3 or 4 years ago, there was a kind of a hype in the IT world that everything was going to the cloud. And, now every IT company is talking about, well, hybrid, but also the cloud does not mean it's a remote server. You can have your own cloud stored in-house. It's really how you connect to that server. But the key is that the server can be anywhere you want.
Right.
So for those environments that want to manage their own server, when we fully become cloud-based, that is just part of the mix. So we can offer on-site cloud, or it can be a remote cloud. And we just signed an agreement with a company called IS Corp that provides cloud services in a very secured environment. So we'll be able to offer clients, both sides of the coin.
Gary, earlier you talked about residents that would be purchasing food and then at the same time went to purchase milk and butter, but it was 2 separate transactions. Your system breaks it out that way?
I couldn't really hear your entire question, so maybe I can get you to repeat.
Yeah, so earlier I think you discussed how a person can purchase with your card food and then also purchase milk and butter, and Cardwatch separates those 2 purchases?
Yes.
Okay. If the resident decides to return something, how does that work?
Well, if they return the items and we just do a refund, and we know what account the transaction came from. So just things in reverse here. We know that a quart of milk and a pound of butter is not meal plan eligible. So therefore, there's only one place it can go, and that's the resident charge account. So when we refund that transaction, it refunds that charge amount. So there'll be let's say if they're both $1 in a perfect world, we have a $2 charge to their account. When we do the refund, we have a refund of $2 to that specific account.
So let's talk a little bit about item search. So we want a couple of things that happen with our current search profiles. One is a resident questions their bill, and because it's been 30 days and they don't remember that they had their guests in the middle of the month, and so dining services has to go back in and try to find this resident's account. Of course, the resident doesn't have the receipt, and spends a significant amount of time trying to research this. This happens at the front desk as well. The second search parameter is food production wants to know the last time we had this item on, how many did we sell? Or conversely, when is this item popular? Is it, if I want to know how many cheeseburgers I sold between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock on any given day, current software doesn't support that. It supports how many cheeseburgers you sold during the day, but it doesn't break down by time period, number of meals, that in a very easy manner, so that we can look without clearing out the machine and restarting. Can't tell you exactly how many breakfasts, lunches, or dinners we did. We could tell you how many breakfasts we sold, but it's an all-day kind of count. So talk to us a little bit about that reporting.
Okay, well, why don't we save both of those specific questions when we take a look at the resident profile, and then we'll take a look at the menu item mix, and I'll show you how easy it is to get reports out.
Perfect.
Okay, so just kind of moving along here with this spending plan thing. We've got meal values here, but I'm not going to talk about those because they don't apply in a dining dollar environment. So, do you have any fixed meal plans as well?
No. Well, our assisted living and memory care communities have an unlimited meal plan,
Oh, okay.
but we do not use our current POS to capture those.
Okay.
We only use those to capture their guest meals.
Okay.
So the resident charges don't necessarily hit the meal plan, but they do
Okay.
have.
So I'm not gonna spend any time going over those. What I will spend time with just briefly is in a meal plan environment that may apply to your assisted living residents. Is we have a function called Build a Meal, and what Build a Meal does is it allows you to frame exactly what is included in a meal. So, for example, you may have a traditional dinner meal, may be one appetizer, which can consist of soup or salad, or variations thereof. It might consist of one entree, three sides, a dessert, plus a hot and a cold beverage. Excuse me. So within Build a Meal, it allows you to tell Cardwatch what is in that meal. And then as the meal is ordered by the resident, it compares it to the Build a Meal profile. And if, as long as everything qualifies, the meal will go through as expected. If, for example, though, you have a resident who wants, let's say, 2 portions of an entree. So they want 2 pork chops instead of 1. Build a Meal allows you to tell the system what should happen. So do you want to charge the resident an extra couple of dollars for that extra portion? Or do you just want to let it ride? If you're going to let it ride, I wouldn't use Build a Meal. But if you're going to charge that resident for the extra pork chop, it allows you to do that. So just something to keep in mind. Okay.
Gary, or excuse me, that is changeable, correct?
When you say changeable.
So, for instance, on Mother's Day, we want to include a mimosa, but normally an alcoholic beverage wouldn't be included in a meal.
Yeah, we can. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to include it for free, then you just put it at 0 price.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
We also have a couple of I wouldn't call it gimmicky. We've got more and more clients who want to use it, but we can on top of a dining dollar plan or a meal plan or a charge plan, we can piggyback what we call a points rewards program. So if you wanted to reward those residents who spend extra dollars within your community, you can give them points that allow them to buy other products and services within your community. So that's just something you can turn off and on. Okay. I would say there's only 2 or 3% of our senior living communities that use this function. And pretty much all of them are on a kind of a pilot program right now. Okay.
Good.
Part of this as well is what we call a subsidy plan. So let's say for your food service employees, it is not uncommon for them to get a certain amount of free food when they're working. So assuming that you do want to track everything so that you can measure everything, you can use a subsidy plan for food service staff that says, I will give you $5 a day in free food. Okay. So we build a special meal plan specifically for food service employees, link them to it, and everything that they wish to consume has to go through a point of sale terminal. And the subsidy plan will determine what their subsidy is. For example, if it's 50% off or it's $5 a day that's forgiven, then we can set up the plan accordingly. Once they get to that $5 tipping point, everything else that they buy will get pushed to their charge account. Okay, and then that other charge account will determine whether you're going to give them a discount as well. So we can give them the normal retail price, or we can give them a quote employee special price. Okay. That same feature can also be used for, let's say, executive staff. They're given a card. It's part marketing and part, personal business type scenario. We can manage what they spend and give them a subsidy, which could be, again, a discount or free food or whatever it is. And we can push that subsidized dollar value to the department that the employee belongs to. So typically in the past, any subsidies or discounts that are given, the food service department takes the hit for it in their budget. Well, within Cardwatch, we can push that subsidy value to the department that the employee works for. So if it's a marketing department employee, that subsidy would appear on their budget, not on the food service budget.
So currently, Gary, we have all of our departments have a cost center associated with them.
Uh-huh.
And each department has a card that they can use to make charges to through our POS system, and it automatically gets billed to their cost center.
Okay, perfect.
Does Cardwatch have the same capability?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we just build an account in here based on that card number. We can, just on a straight charge basis, accumulate those charges and then push them off to the department budget account.
Okay, great.
I would assume you have some sort of billing code for that?
You know? Is there a billing code for the department charges? Yeah.
Yeah, so all we would do is for department charges, we would attach that billing code to each one of those charges. And when we pull in the charge file for the end of the month, part of that file is going to contain department charges with the correct billing code.
Okay, great.
Okay. You honestly, at the end of the month, you shouldn't have to look at or modify one single transaction because all the billing codes are there.
Great.
Okay. Now we also have something called, and I haven't got it turned on for, it's turned on for this location, something called location restrictions. So this is something that a few communities use, and the whole idea is that, for example, in a dining room setting where there is table service, obviously it's a higher cost delivery environment. So what can happen there is if you opt to eat meals in a cafe setting where it may be self-serve, you can serve the same items at a lower cost. So through location restrictions, you can set up those parameters so that if they eat in this location, you're paying top dollar, but if you eat in this location, you can have the same food, but because there's fewer services being provided, we can give you another price level. Okay? So again, something to consider. So we also have what's called a holiday meal. And this really only applies to meals on plan, but if you have kind of a fixed meal count environment, we can change the typical values that you would charge, let's say in the dining room or assisted living dining room, the traditional values for meals on that specific day, like Christmas, and bump them up to a higher value. And they will come into play for Christmas Day only and then go back to normal the next day. Okay.
Hey, Gary?
Yes.
If does Cardwatch have the ability so our assisted living guests might pay one price for, let's say, a meal at Christmas, and it might be the same meal as a different price in our independent living, is there only one value or field for us to enter meals? Or in other words, how would Cardwatch differentiate between a Christmas meal in our independent versus a Christmas meal in our assisted living?
Well, first of all, revenue location. So because Cardwatch can manage multiple revenue locations, each revenue location can apply different standards.
So as far as entering menu items into Cardwatch, you could take one menu item and give it different values, or do we have to enter it multiple times?
No, based on, like, for example, you see this location, holiday meal values are applied by spending plan. And between the spending plan and location restrictions, we can completely modify the spending plan.
Okay, I see.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So we've pretty much given you a decent overview of the whole spending plan side. Do you have any additional questions before we move on?
I do have a question about the billing code file. I'm not sure.
I have to get you to speak up.
I do have a question about the billing code file.
Okay.
So I was wondering, is there something that can be automatically exported into a file? And is it an Excel file, or how are these billing codes shown on this file?
That's exactly what we do. So at the end of the month, based on your billing application, and we have interfaces to probably 20 or 25 different senior living billing applications. We'll create a export file with all of the charges that have been made for that period in a file that your billing application requires. So if we don't have your billing application file format, we build that for you. It takes a new one takes us less than 5 minutes now, because the way that we gather data is the same. It's really just building a unique output file. So when we build that file, it's in the format that your billing application requires, which includes the billing codes.
Okay.
And I can tell you that the typical process from starting that file creation to posting into your billing application is typically under 5 minutes.
Okay. And what's the time frame? So when it automatically exports, is it at the end of the month? Is it at the beginning, or is that something we can specify?
Yeah, you have to specify the time period. So, for example, if month end falls on a Saturday, your accounting department may not get to building that export file till Monday. So you can go into our export routine and say, give me all the transactions from August 1st to August 31st, even though you're running the application on September 3rd. It will build that file, exclude any transactions that occurred in the month of September, build the file, and then you can fire it into your billing system.
So is this something that has to be built every month? This export file?
Again, I missed part of your question. Could you speak up a little bit?
Something that has to be built every month, or can you set it up and then just run it every month? Or does it have to be built completely? I'm just curious.
If I understand your questions correctly, do we automate that process? No, we don't. It's a manual process run by administration.
Okay.
But the file format, remains the same. We set a parameter once we have the correct output file. We set a parameter in Cardwatch. It knows that it has to build that file each time. The file structure the same each time. You select which which spending plans you want to include in that export file. So, for example, you typically are not going to put in any of your declining dollar transactions in there, just the additional charges, correct, for invoicing?
Correct.
So you will select the various the charge plans that are affected, and it will build a file containing every transaction with the billing codes, and then you import it into your billing application. Okay? Any more questions?
We have just a few more minutes on what's going to end up being part one of our conversation together.
Okay.
This group likes to process, and we'll go back and have all sorts of different questions.
Perfect.
So give us the next overviews, and if we could do it in the next 5 to 10 minutes, that'd be great.
Okay, so what we'll take a look at now is a kind of a resident profile look. So this is a listing of every account holder within your application. So you can see the primary ID that you see here typically will match the primary account number within your billing application. Okay, and then if you recall from our earlier conversations, we discussed key fobs and cards and all the rest of it. That's where all of these alternate ID fields come into play. So a resident can have more than one alt ID. It doesn't matter which alternate ID they use at the point of sale, but we store those numbers in here so that we can reference their primary account number. The key is we just don't want to expose their primary account number.
Right.
Okay. So we keep their last name, first name, the customer type. So we've got IL, AL, SK for skilled, and so on and so on. It might be EM for employee. So we can use that as a sort function. We can also have what's called a master and a sub account. So a husband and wife, for example, they may have their own meal plan accounts and their own charge accounts, but when we export their transactions, we will export them under the master account, so that when you're posting to your billing application, we're updating the couple's account and not an individual account. Okay. Then it shows in the browse here their last transaction date. And again, it's up to you how much of the address information you want to put in here. Most will at least include, let's say, a room number, a phone number, and perhaps an email address, so that it just provides additional sort or find options throughout the campus. So if they don't have their card, we can find them by their phone number or room number. Okay. As you can see, we store a picture of the residents. That can be on a separate server if you wanted to. We simply go and find this resident's picture based on their account number. So what we suggest you do, if you don't have pictures already, then you save them based on their account number. So in this case, it might be 1.png. And then when we look for the record, we'll search for it by that primary account number. And of course, Barbara Bush, the one down, hers would be 2.png, and so on.
Gary, you said you can search by account number, apartment number, or phone number. Can you search by name?
We can search by name as well. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to consider, because it's happened many times before, during the transaction process, we kind of like to steer away from searching by name to start a transaction. And just to give you an example, you know, in a fast-paced food service or retail environment, you search by name, you come up with 2 Smiths. The server, because she's in a hurry, checks the wrong one.
Yep.
Right? So we like to try and avoid those scenarios. So
yes, but our assisted living residents sometimes maybe can't remember their apartment number or their phone number, so name is usually the most accurate
sure.
way to find somebody.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it certainly can be done. We just got to point out that if you do have two Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, then
Yep.
you've got to be conscious of selecting the right one.
Yep.
And the pictures help, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, that's the kind of the address information. We've looked at alternate IDs here. You will also notice that there's some message information down here as well. So when sales are made for this particular resident at the point of sale, this information is going to appear on the point of sale display. And this is the information that's sent to the remote printer when the order is fired back to the kitchen. So one of the unique things within Cardwatch is, first of all, we assume that every seat at every table requires a separate guest check. So,
Good assumption.
Yep. So we also know the name of the resident who's sitting in that seat. So when we send the order back to the kitchen, we send their name, the table number, the seat number, and this allergy information back to the kitchen as well. Okay, so if you're like most restaurants or senior living community restaurants, you are now leaving your servers on the floor, your experienced servers on the floor, and you have runners who will bring the food to the table. Well, if they can, if they have the ticket that was prepped in the kitchen, they know exactly who the food belongs to. They know the name of the resident, they know the table number, and they know the seat number. So nobody's arriving at the table with a tray full of food and auctioning it off. Who had the roast beef? Who had the fish? Right? So we know where the food belongs.
Now, Gary, we also, Cardwatch also has the ability to combine checks, correct? So if a resident has guests and they are going.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when they enter the dining room, we have what's called a check-in terminal, and so you can identify the resident as they walk in, and at that point you can say, well, Mr. Jones has two guests with him. So when the server picks up Mr. Jones' guest check, she can also see that he or she can see that Mr. Jones has two guests with him. So, because in the folder it will say guest of Mr. Jones, guest of Mr. Jones. So you can combine the checks then or at the end of the transaction.
Okay, great.
Okay, but it also gives you the option. Keep in mind too that if those guests want to pay on their own, we can do that as well. So they can pay by gift card. If you're allowing credit cards, they can pay by credit card as well.
Okay, great.
But if Mr. Jones is feeling generous, I want to have dinner on him too. Okay.
All right.
Next in this folder, we have which spending plans each resident is connected to. So in this case, they have a C1 plan for their meals, and then of course you can see the resident charge plan, and then we can view transactions from there. So anything that's not absorbed into the meal plan account automatically gets pushed to the resident charge account. The credit limit it can be set by the spending plan itself. And then you can further modify it based on the resident's needs or wants or desires. So usually $1,000 is pretty generous, but if they want to spend $99,000 a month, you can set their credit limit at $99,000. Okay. So that pretty much covers the profile. We have emergency contact information. We are using this folder for our mobile app as well, so that anybody that's in here and given certain criteria, so for example, the children of a resident will be able to use a copy of our mobile app to come and check on their parents' account and look to see what they're eating if they want. Okay, so lots of options there. And then we have a year-to-date, period-to-date summary sales information for this individual as well. Okay, and you can see breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and year-to-date purchases, any subsidies that were granted, and so on. Some of this data is kind of bogus because we use this for our demo application, but you can also see that you can use it for periods.
Gary,
Now,
on that screen you talked about allergies. Is there an area where you could put diet restrictions as well?
Yes. So if you remember back in this Alt ID field, we've got some diet information located in here. As we put additional lipstick and makeup on this application over the next few months, we are adding additional allergy and nutrition fields as well.
Okay, thank you.
So we talked earlier about reporting. So if I do a right mouse click on Robert Downey Sr.'s folder, I get a sub menu that allows me to look at account activity, so I can adjust their total, meal counts, meal carryovers. I can add a SAC meal, which is essentially a future order. I can change their plan. I can schedule deactivation. I can change their primary ID number. I can make a payment on account or reverse a payment. Okay. I can also look at their prepaid accounts if they have any, and then reports. So here we look at individual user transactions, transactions with balances, individual transactions with item details, unpaid transactions, spending by location, item purchases, period-to-date totals, year-to-date totals, and other purchase reports. So if we look at transaction details, it allows me to specify the date and time range, okay? And then a couple of other parameters down here, and I can hit, have I done any transactions? I'm going to move it back to the first. Okay, so this is a report including transaction detail. So you can see here, bowl of soup, some kind of beer, resident meal, salad bar with a meal, a Kirin beer, and a Sam Adams. It must have been a party. You can see the taxes that were exempt here, state exempt, Allegheny exempt, the subtotal liquor tax that was added to the transaction because in this particular location, they tax alcohol. So you can see here that part of the transaction was charged to their meal account and part of it was to their charge account. Okay. Then we look down at other transactions, and this would go on forever if they did a month's worth, but you can narrow it down by date range, but this is the detailed information. And I can print this, prints on a standard printer, and this information is also available in an inquiry terminal that, again, is designed for residents. It has, you know, once they log in with their key fob or ID and PIN number, we've put huge buttons on there that describes which account they want to look at. And then if you put a receipt printer there, we can reprint receipts.
Cool.
Did you run that report by individual person?
This particular report is run by individual, yes.
Is there a total at the end?
I missed the last part.
trend?
I don't believe there is here. This is transactions by for transaction detailed information. So we're not totaling up the sum of each transaction, no.
Is there a report that you can print by a person that gives you the total at the end?
Speak up, Tree.
Is there, I know, but it's soft. Is there a report that you can print by person that will give you the total at the end?
Yes. So let me go back here. I'm just trying to think of which one. Reports, user transactions, and then so I think this one totals it up by account. I've only got a couple of transactions for this individual. So these are different transactions. So we started the month, gave him $465. And then we had one transaction that we did for this individual yesterday. So these are two different plans. We're not adding the plans together, but we're showing the transaction summary information by spending plan. So if we had 50 transactions here, this would be the report that shows what the value and the sum of the value is here down below.
Will it total the 50 customers at the end? I think so.
Again, this is for one individual. Did you want to see a report for a number of people?
Wait, before you go to the number of people, it says sell at grill and host. Do you hear me?
I can't.
Okay. So is that the, what do you guys call it over here? Is that the dining area?
Yeah, I think so.
If you tell you what I'll do is, if you like, we've got files of report samples. Would it help if I sent you some of those?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe once you've had a chance to absorb some of this and talk amongst yourselves, I can also, we can also run through some point of sale transactions and then look at the reports. So we can see exactly how each account is affected. That makes sense?
Overall, what we're looking at right now is something that has answered most of our questions, at least on the surface, that it can do a lot of the stuff that we need the new one to do. So if you can send us your slide deck or some sample reports, we can work offline and dig into them and come back with some more specific questions around, okay, show me exactly how this works. To find out what Mrs. Jones ate on September 3rd and why we charged her so much for it, or and any of the other stuff that way. Because on the surface, we're talking pretty good. And then at the end of that one, Gary, you and Ken and I need to have a conversation about implementation costs. Okay,
perfect. Right. Now, are you guys familiar with Highlands of Pittsford?
Sure. Lloyd
We've been in there forever.
Okay.
So, you can have a chat with those folks too.
I'll be seeing him next week.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Now, I will tell you though that they're still not doing a la carte dining. They're doing just kind of meal clicks.
Yep. We know.
Yeah.
We talk all the time about when you're going to make that jump, Lloyd.
I know. I think we've done, it's got to be a dozen quotes for them to kind of, update their point of sale, because they'll need more point of sale terminals and so on.
Oh,
and it kind of gets pushed to the next budget year and the next budget year and the next budget year.
Welcome to senior living.
Yeah, I know.
All right, Gary, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. I look forward to talking to you guys again, and we'll get this information out to you.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.